Hello and Assalamualaikum to Dr. Akmal and my fellow friends. Today, we're going to present you about income, inflation and labor force, the key drivers of fertility rate variability. This is our group members. Did you know over the past few decades, Malaysia has seen a significant drop in total fertility rate from 3.7 in 1988 to just 1.7 in 2023. This is below the replacement level of 2.1 and it has been that way since 2013. This trend raised serious concerns about the country's future workforce, aging population and long-term economic stability. Our study specifically investigate how three economic indicators, which is GDP, inflation and women participation in labour force, affects Malaysian fertility rate over 36 years period from 1988 to 2023.
Next, in Chapter 2, we discuss the key literature and theory behind our research. We focus on how GDP, inflation, and women labour affect Malaysia's fertility rate. So, firstly, our analysis is grounded in the new home economics theory. We suggest that as income increases, families tend to prioritize child quality over quantity, which leading to lower fertility. This supports the negative effect or the negative relationship between GDP and fertility, where economic growth tends to reduce birth rate. The second relationship is for inflation. There is a negative relationship between inflation and fertility rate in the long term, as supported by past studies. High living costs reduce purchasing power, making it financially harder for families to have children. For the last relationship there is a mixed relationship between women labour and fertility rate. It is because some studies found a negative relationship due to work-family conflict, while the others suggest a positive relationship when the work itself or the workplace is supported by the family or friendly policy. So, our study here aim to clarify this conflicting finding in the Malaysian context.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nuri Nabila binti Mat Zainal. So now, let's continue with my part in this chapter. As you can see, there is a research framework of our study, whereas the dependent variable is total fertility rate, TFR, where the independent variable are gross domestic product, GDP, inflation, INF, and women labour, WL. The target population is Malaysia population as represented by macroeconomic and demographic data. For the data collection, all the variable of dependent variable and independent variable are from DOSM, Department of Statistics, Malaysia. For the sampling data, we get 36 observation from 1988 to 2023. Next, we continue to the hypothesis statement. For the income, the hypothesis alternative is there is a significant relationship between income and total fertility rate. For the hypothesis null, which is H null, there is no significant relationship between income and fertility rate. The hypothesis for inflation, for the H alternative, there is a significant relationship between inflation and total fertility rate. For the H null, there is no significant relationship between inflation and fertility rate. For the last, women labour, the H alternative is there is a significant relationship between women labour and fertility rate. For the H null, there is no significant relationship between women labour and fertility rate. So this is the test that consider for data analysis that we use in this study. So the first test is descriptive analysis. The second one is multiple linear regression. The third one is correlation test, covariance analysis. The fourth one is multicollinearity. The fifth is normality, and the sixth, heteroscedasticity. All these tests will explain in the chapter 4 in the next slide.
In this section, we found that all four variables, TFR, GDP, inflation, and women's labour force are approximately normally distributed based on the Jacob-Berra test. GDP and women labour force participation show higher standard deviation, while TFR and inflation are more stable. In this section, we present the regression result to identify which variables significantly affect Malaysian fertility rate. From the coefficient analysis, GDP shows a significant negative relationship with TFR, meaning as GDP increase, fertility trends to decrease. Inflation has a weak but positive relationship and is marginally significant at the 10% level. However, women labour force participation shows no significant effect on fertility in this model. The overall model is statistically significant as shown by the F-test, indicating that GDP and inflation are useful predictors of TFR. The R-square value is high at around 91.76%, meaning that the model explains of most of the variation in fertility rate. The adjusted R-square is similarly strong, which is at 90.92. However, the Derby-Watson statistic is low, indicating possible autocorrelation in the residual.
Now, let's continue with the correlation test covariance analysis. As you can see, this is the result of the test that we run in this study. So in this test, the power value of the pair, total fertility rate and inflation, is 0.0109. Okay. While for total fertility rate and GDP, and also the total fertility rate and woman labor are 0.0000. So this indicates that the null hypothesis is rejected at 10% significant level. So therefore, we can conclude that there is a positive relationship between the dependent variable, total fertility rate, and independent variable, gross domestic product, inflation, and woman labor. Okay, for the correlation between GDP, gross domestic product, and woman labor is 0.9428. Okay, so the correlation figure is near to 1, meaning that the data of woman labor has collinearity problems. To confirm this problem, multi-collinearity test need to be run. Okay, this is the multi-collinearity that I said before. After we run the multi-collinearity with the all variable, include with woman labor, so the centered VIF for GDP is 9.1205. For the INF is 1.1434, it's normal. And for the WL is 8.9942, which means that for centered VIF for GDP and WL is more than 5. So it shows that the WL has problem collinearity with GDP. But after I considered to remove the WL and I run the test, so the result shows the centered VIF for GDP and INF is 1.1434, which means the two result of variable is below than 5. So means the data doesn't have problem or issue in multi-collinearity. So it means that GDP and INF doesn't have the same relationship with both of them.
So our next test is normality test. In this study, a normality test was performed to determine if the variables utilized, which are total fertility rate, with gross domestic product, inflation, and women's labor force, had a normal distribution. As shown in the figure, the p-value is 0.331837, which is more than 5%, which is 0.05, and the Jacob-Berra test value is 2.206222. Since the p-value is more than 5%, we may conclude that the data is normally distributed and do not reject the null hypothesis. This indicates that the data is appropriate and normally distributed.
My name is Nazira binti Sazali, and I will explain on the last test, which is heteroscedasticity p-values for both F statistics, and the chi-square is are below 0.05, which is one is 0.0136 and the other one is 0.0313. This indicates that we have to reject the null hypothesis of the constant variance. Therefore, it means that the heteroscedasticity is present, and we accept the H alternative, which this data is not homoscedastic and the error term does not have a constant variance. Lastly, I will present on the chapter 5 for the discussion. Our research, Malaysia's fertility rate and its relationship with GDP, inflation, and female labor force using the 30 years, approximately 30 years national data. Our analysis found that there is a significant negative relationship between GDP and fertility, supporting by the new home income theory that higher income leads to families that prioritize quality over quantity of children due to the rising opportunity cost. Interestingly, inflation showed a slight positive relationship with fertility, possibly due to the short-term relief policies or behavioral shift. Meanwhile, female labor force participation had no significant effect, suggesting that other cultural or policy factors are involved. Our final model explained that over 91% 0.6% of fertility rate changes, indicating that the economic factors strongly influence the demographic trends. Based on these findings, we recommend that for the future studies, they need to include interviews or focus groups to understand more about the personal and cultural motivations behind the fertility decisions. Next, to address the declining birth rates, we suggest policies that could reduce financial burdens. For example, like tax incentive, baby bonus, like Singapore implemented, and family-focused housing subsidies. We can also promote a better work-life balance through a longer parental leave, flexible work options, and improved childcare access. Ultimately, in order to tackling the fertility decline, it requires more than just economic growth. It means that creating an environment where starting a family is affordable, supported, and possible. So that is all from our group. Thank you.